What is going on, everybody, today? It could be today. You know, I always start by saying that. I don't usually, but it says that on the door that I'm looking at. How is everybody doing today? My name is Dante. We are 𝓟There Dante, and today we got a banger episode. I'm so excited. I've been talking about this, but before I even get into it, let me go ahead and play the intro music.
Perhaps your skills do extend a bit farther than basketball.
As I was saying, my name is Dante. We are 𝓟There Dante, and today we got some new information. And once again, this is not new. It's new to me, and it's going to be new to you, but this is actually old information. And you might be asking yourself, what is this dude talking about? He hasn't said nothing. He's been going for a minute 30. He hasn't said nothing yet. Well, I might as well just hop right into it. All right. Today we are going to be talking about the Carians or the Caribs. Now, as you can see, I've got my Caribana t-shirt on because I'm Caribbean myself. And if you are, of Caribbean descent, this is some deep information that I think we should all know, but for some reason we're not. Anyways, we are going to be talking about the Carians or the Caribs. Now, this comes from a book called Shadow of Atlantis. So yeah, we're going to be, I guess, watching a small portion of this video from a creator which I've, referenced so many times in other episodes. But so this video is from the creator Kurimeo. Let me go ahead and pull up his actual his YouTube channel. Kurimeo Ahau, Kurimeo space Ahau. Make sure you go give this guy a follow. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel if you're seeing this. And shout outs to you, my dude. You've been dropping some knowledge. I was a part of Drop Nation when this video dropped because I saw the titles. I'm like, finally, someone's talking about this stuff. And I know you've been talking about it, but specifically the Carians or the Caribs in the Shadow of Atlantis. Anyways, let's hop right into the video.
Carians on this chapter, right? So just real quick, what do we think we know about the Carians? What do they teach us about the Carians? It says here the Carians, ancient Greek, were the ancient.
Oh, one last thing. Also, I do have some incense, so let me just set the vibe right, and then we'll actually wash this together. In the meantime, listen to this intermission music. Give me 1 second. What is up, explorers? Before this episode begins, I just wanted to remind you guys, if you haven't already, make sure you check the link in the description below. Take you directly to our Patreon if you would like to support. You could support us for the low cost of a caramel ice cap from Tim Hortons. That's it. So if you'd like to support, make sure you go ahead, go to the Patreon link in the description below, and enjoy the episode. Peace. Make sure to cleanse the energy, cleanse the space. We want to make space in our mind for this new knowledge we're about to take in. And I hope you guys are excited as I am for this, because this is like big stuff. So anyways, let me go ahead and finish cleansing the energy of the space, and we'll hop right back into the video. All right, well, now I realize that this is going to be blowing in my face the whole episode. So I'm just going to move this over to the side, like so. Hopefully this is still in frame. Either way, it's there. The energy is cleansed. Let's go ahead and actually watch this video.
Inhabitants of Caria in southwest Anatolia, Caria. All right, so on the Mediterranean. Where is the true Mediterranean? Are we just talking about the Gulf of Mexico? It is not clear when the Carians enter into history. They don't know, okay? The definition is dependent on corresponding Caria and the Carians to the Cariquilla or Cariquisa mentioned in the Hittite records, all right? So they don't really know. I just wanted to show you guys that before we start reading today. And it says here, chapter 7. Some millenniums ago, during the great westward migrations of the Asiatic tribes, such to hijack the Cyclades Islands of the archipelago and the neighboring shores of Asia Minor, saw the appearance of a new nation called Carians by the historian Thucydides. All right, all of a sudden they appear in history. We know very little about them beyond the fact that they created a considerable developed civilization.
Considerably developed. Now, oh, I forgot to mention this book. So he's reading a book. The book is called Shadow of Atlantis. He's reading chapter 7. And I believe this book is from the 1940s. So for them to say a considerably developed civilization millenniums ago, take that in. Anyway, let's keep going. Hopefully I don't stop it as much.
We shall see later on that this Carian civilization was organically connected not only with the Phoenician culture, but also with the cultures of Crete and Cyprus, and even with the Sumer Babylonian culture. Some historians believe that the Carians were related to the mysterious Pelasgi, and like the latter, were not of Aryan origin. The fact that the Phoenicians called themselves
not of Aryan origin? You mean these were not white people? Well,
the people of Caro. Uh-oh, the Phoenicians? Who's the Phoenicians? Remember all the past presentations. Seafaring people, including Danites, Israelites, people coming out of Canaan, the true promised land. So they call themselves the people of Caru. Permits us to believe that the Carians of Thucydides were also related to the Phoenicians, inasmuch as they possess many points in common. As the Phoenicians were Semites or Shemites, therefore the Carians were perhaps also a branch of Semitic race. Ancient traditions record that some millenniums before our era, the Carians formed a state under the rule of Chaldean magicians. Okay, so who's the Chaldeans? Check out my Ireland of Chaldea videos and all my ancient Maya videos. Who are the Chaldeans? These magicians, druids, whose name was enveloped in mystery and has not survived. So they had a magician leader, We only know that this name consisted of 3 taboo words, the initials of which were K, A, and R. An artificial word, car, was formed from these initials and used as a conventional name for the magician ruler. Eventually, the tribes united under the rule of Car began to call themselves Carians.
okay, so this is an interesting point that I think I missed the first time. So he's saying we only know that this name consisted of 3 taboo words, right? So a word that starts with K, a word that starts with A, and a word that starts with R, but these are taboo words. And then so basically they took the first initials from each word and formed it into the word car. Interesting.
The Chaldean origin of Car seems to indicate Sumerian participation in some degree in the formation of the Carian state. In any case, this circumstance causes us to suspect the cultural influence of the Sumerians in this particular corner of Near East. Car was the first lawgiver of his people, introducing monotheism, and found in the city of Halicarnassus, or the Holy Garden of Kar. All right, Chaldeans, Druids, what are we really talking about here? And who are the Druids? Remember, let's go back to the Israel and the Nations of the World series. Let's go back to my Danite videos. Let's go back to my Chaldean and Ireland videos. Let's put it all together. During the life of Kar, his empire was divided in two parts. Caria, with the capital of Halicarnassus, and Cara, or the present Cilicia, which apparently was a vassal state. There was a period during which Phoenicia, or the land of Carus, was also part of the Carian Empire, and thus all three states, Caria, Cara, and Caru, were at one time united under one common ruler. All right, Karakate, huh? So shout out to 432 The Drop Radio, Con Drop, and his Prester John series, and all the drop on the Kara, right? Who is this one common ruler? Are we just talking about the Prester? The historian Diodorus considered Kar's times a true golden age in the history of mankind. The Carians, led by the mysterious Chaldean magician, made many useful inventions and discoveries, and their ships visited all the seas known at that time. Perhaps the legends concerning happy Arcadia were nothing else than a dim remembrance of the prosperity of the prehistoric Carians. And
So once again, this is an interesting point because he says led by the Chaldean magician. And as we all know, magic is just science we do not understand yet, right? So if they're saying that this guy was a magician ruler, who's to say that maybe he wasn't a magician? He just had science that these people didn't know about, right? And what does it say? Because one, a historian, so someone who was studying history in the 1940s, right, was saying that the Cars time was a true golden age, meaning that they didn't even believe that the time that they were writing this in, 1940s, whenever, was a golden age, which is interesting because now they say, the general population is like, oh, well, we live in the best time. We don't know that. If they're saying that that was the true golden age, what age are we in now? Is this a golden age too? Anyways, back to the video.
the term Arcadia was a distortion of Carcadia or Cartadia, or even of the Mesopotamian Acadia. And we just talking about Acadians? Talking about Newfoundland, Canada? Huh, where's the true old world? That's pretty close to the British Isles on the other side. Not that far. You follow the stream, it'll bring you right over there. Carr, being a great politician and statesman, concluded alliances with some of the states in Asia Minor and commercial treaties with Hobros, Cyprus, Crete, Sicily, and Sardinia. The best known of Carian political alliances was the Carian Union, Caria, Troy, Ion, Phoenicia, and Crete. Again, who's the Trojans? Who's at Troy? Judah, right? From Dardanus, son of Sarah. Against their common enemies, the Achaeans, all right? The Danites. Beefing with the Danites. But this alliance was concluded evidently some centuries after the death of Carr at the epoch of the Trojan War. The cultural activity of Carr abroad consisted in the diffusion of the Carian script, superior methods of agriculture, trade, etc. Okay? When we're talking about superior methods of agriculture, we already know these people had to have been coming from ancient America. Agriculture began.
Look at this. So we have a timeline, 8,000 to 7,000 BC is when they say agriculture started. But even then, this guy's saying they brought even better agriculture to this time. What does that even mean?
And here, all right, most of the foods, fruits, vegetables, main staples of the world, a lot of them, most of them originated here in the Americas, especially corn. Carr sent into all countries priests, missionaries, and caryatids. Example, priestesses, all right, women, priestesses who taught women folk the art of weaving. The economic hegemony of the Carians among the prehistoric Mediterranean nations was very substantially supported by their cultural superiority due to the activity of the legendary god. It is interesting to note that this enigmatical preacher, ruler, founder of a new religion, and social reformer appeared on the Mediterranean shores almost simultaneously with similar leaders in other civilized countries such as 𝓁ⓟZoroaster in Persia and Manu in Babylonia, and preceded Moses only by a few centuries. It seems that the Carians were a very
Okay, so this is also a really good point that he makes here, right? He's saying, right, that it is of interesting note that this enigmatical preacher, ruler, founder of a new religion, right? So Carr, this leader guy, appeared on the Mediterranean shores almost at the same time, meaning this guy shows up on the shores, and now these similar leaders, like the leader of Zoroaster in Persia and Manu in Babylonia, right? So he goes there, and then all of a sudden these leaders show up. Who's to say that he wasn't that leader that made all these things show up? And even as he says, and then preceded Moses only by a few centuries, right? And this is an interesting, I guess, spot to pause it here, is because if we go back to, I think, one of my earlier recordings, we talk about how Thoth in his Thoth the Atlantean, right? Thoth the Atlantean talks about how there is another religion that's going to come after his. So he already knows that there's a new religion coming, and he warns about it. And this is before Christianity, and then it turns out that that's when Christianity first pops up, as he's basically saying right here. This guy preceded Moses only by a few centuries, right? So anywhere from 200 years to 900 years. So within a millennia, somewhere, this Carr guy, he goes, Carr guy, this guy named Carr, he goes to these places, and then all of a sudden these leaders and religions start popping up. How do we know that Christianity is not just a diluted version of this Carian religion, something like that? Anyways, let's keep playing.
enterprising people, and their trade expeditions penetrated far beyond the Mediterranean Sea. This assertion could be proved by numerous geographical and other terms possessing the syllable car or cars, some of which are preserved until now. Thus we have, for instance, Carnac in Egypt, Carnac in France, Brittany, the mountains in Cape Carmel, Caramania, a part of the ancient Syria, the city of Carpassos, Cyprus, the island of Carpathos, archipelago, Carniolia, Carinthia, Carpathian mountains, etc., etc. The Carian city of Carpassos in Cyprus built in ancient times certain peculiar capacious ships able to contain as many as 800 passengers and to transport large quantities of merchandise. These ships were called Carpacios, and this word, suffering various modifications in the course of time, reached us, in Russian as well as in other modern languages, in the words Caribs, Barcas, Bark, Bark, French, Barca, etc., signify longboats, all right? Talking about canoes here, Phoenician ships. Perhaps the Spanish.
All right, so this is another great point. They say, how are these people able to travel, right? Because according to the, I guess, I don't even know what to call it, the conventional dogma that exists, Christopher Columbus came from Spain to North America, right? But according to these notes here with proof and stuff like that, this Korean civilization, they were able to have these ships that hold 800 people, and they were going from the Caribbean islands all the way to Brazil, all the way to Cyprus, which is basically Europe, Eurasia, around there. Like, how did they get an 800 person ship all the way from there to Europe? Who knows? The Carians know.
Caravela and the Russian Korabel are also the word Carpacios distorted. Perhaps even the name of Khartoum, British Sudan, and that of the island of Crete, Creta, as well as the word Caravan, all right, derived from the name of the legendary magician, because Car sent his emissaries and founded factories everywhere. Thus, the name of the city of Khartoum could be translated by the word of Kar. It is interesting that termination tumtum, which signifies work, corresponds to the old German verb done or tun, to do. And in our days, the German language possesses a series of words with this ancient termination: reitum, wealth; irruntum, mistake, etc. All these words imply the idea of something accomplished or made. The prefix car in many terms lost its original significance and was transformed into a prefix signifying sacred. Thus, for instance, the name of Karnak means sacred city, and it is known that both Karnaks in Egypt as well as in Brittany were religious centers. The ruins of the Breton Karnak, the city of Druids, all right, again, Druids, again, Chaldean, magicians, what are we talking about? Same thing, contain 80 dolmens, menhirs, and cromlechs, the other sacred name in ancient Gaul, Carnutum, signified in Carian an entire sentence, where the sacred laws were explained by Car. In the language of the Abyssinian Galas, the word Kara signifies the sacred way. The energetic activity of Car produced a strong impression of his people, and later on the great reformer was deified. His economic activity gave many benefits to the neighboring Phoenicia, and the grateful Phoenicians also introduced Car into the pantheon under the name of Melkad or Melkart, the god of trade. The cult of Melkart penetrated later on even into the neighboring Hellas and Rome, where Melkart became Hermes or Mercury.
No, that's not the sound. Where's my bomb sound? Did you hear that, bro? This guy. Let's rewind just a bit. Well, let's replay that. What did he say?
Where Melkart became Hermes or Mercury.
Melkart became Hermes or Mercury. All right. Who is Hermes and Mercury? Those. And who's those? Jehudi. Like, geez. Like, what does this mean? So I want to play that part back one more time, just a little bit further, because it's so profound, right? So he's saying, Car, right, this magician ruler goes, where does it say? Let me just play it again.
Melkad or Melkart, the god of trade. The cult of Melkart penetrated later on even into the neighboring Hellas and Rome, where Melkart became Hermes or Mercury.
Just let that sink in for a second. Melkart, Car, Caribbean, Car, like, it's all right there, but yet for some reason, and this is what's so fascinating, right? It's like all this information is out there for us to see. People wrote it. As you see, this guy, obviously, he made a YouTube video about it. But if this information's out there, why is this not taught in schools? Why are we taught one specific story versus another? You know, this is something that's very interesting to me. Like, why is it taught that, you know, black people come from Africa when we're shown here that they were not of Aryan descent, meaning they were not white, come from the Carian area, Carian area. And then, like I said, they have these ginormous ships or caravans, right? Because this is where the word caravan comes from, that can hold 800 people. And this is before the time of Christopher Columbus. And like he was saying, it goes all the way from the Gulf of Mexico or the Caribbean islands up North and South America, across the Pacific Ocean, all the way to China, Russia, Cyprus, Greece, Rome, all these places. Let's keep going.
Doth. Alas, since the ancient Greeks could not conceive trade without cheating, or Car. Now Hermes or Mercury had also to become the protector of all thieves and swindlers. The Lord of the Universe, whose cult was introduced by Car, had no name except the Kabbalistic Pan, made up of the initials of the three mysterious words, of which the name of Supreme Being was formed. Later on, Pan joined the pantheon of the ancient Greeks in the capacity of the deity.
All right, I know I just unpaused it, but this is so interesting. All right, so we have CAR, right? KAR, which is an acronym for three taboo words, right? Taboo words. So they took the initials and then made KAR. Well, apparently what he's saying here is that the Lord of the universe, whose cult, so the Lord of the universe, right? The Lord of the universe, whose cult was introduced by Car, right? Who was this magical leader, who is the Lord of the universe, has no name except for the Kabbalistic Pan, made up of the initials of the three mysterious words, which the name of the supreme being was formed. All right, so Pan, P-A-N, is actually an acronym for whatever the acronym for K-A-R was. But this is what's so interesting, because Pan is also looked at as the devil now, if I'm not mistaken. Like, it's looked at in a bad light. So I wonder why. Let's keep reading or listening or watching.
Personifying the whole of visible nature and inspiring her creative powers. Great Pan maintained his place in the Greco-Roman world for a long time until he was superseded by the cult of the great Galilean. It was then that the famous phrase, "the great Pan is dead," was born. According to Christian traditions, this sentence was heard for the first time by the crew and passengers of the ship which carried St. Paul to Italy. When this ship passed a solitary Mediterranean islet, the lamentations of numerous voices and a great cry, "the great Pan is dead," reached the ears of the crew and passengers. This god Pan was occasionally called Tupan, which name, according to Professor Varnhagen, signified, in the languages of the Pelasgi, Phoenicians, and Carians, the divine Pan. But the prefix tu by itself signified also a devout sacrifice. The images of Pan represented mostly a faun with goatee and hoofs. The Christian priests of the early centuries AD fought energetically against the widespread cult of Pan and delegated his attributes to the devil in order to antagonize the Mediterranean population against the persistent Carian.
Did y'all see this? The Christians use propaganda, bro. Okay? The Christian priests, what does it say? Where is it? What did it say? The Christian priests of the early centuries AD fought energetically. So they didn't fight physically. They fought energetically with propaganda. Where is it? They fought energetically against the widespread cult, right? So they started calling it Cult of Pan and delegated his attributes, so the goat hooves and the goat head and all these things, to the devil, bro. Wow. Just take that in. So the Christians were like, oh, well, if you look at these guys' religion, they're worshiping our devil, according to the Christians, which is propaganda, right? They were fighting this energetically. Let's keep listening.
Deity. All right, you guys hear that? That's Baphomet, the goat.
Baphomet.
So it kind of does make sense when we're talking about Thoth, Hermes Trismegistus, Hermetics, Freemasonry, Templars, Baphomet. Thus, even today, the goat's horns, the goatee, and the hooves are inseparable from the popular conception of the devil as they were in ancient world from Pan. The goddess Cybele, who was believed to be the mother of Pan and later on of Car, was also called Tupana or 𝓁₂. This religious conception of universal motherhood was perhaps a modification of an old Sumerian idea concerning Ishtar. It was personified in Phoenicia by Astarte or Astaroth, in Persia by Anahit or Anaitis, and later on by Caeres or Ceres by the Greeks and Romans. Right? Remember Ceres and all these people? A lot of these are corn deities. Some traditions of the Hindu Brahmins concerning the origin of the gypsies affirm that the cult of Astaroth in Phoenicia was brought into vogue there by the gypsies, the mysterious tribe probably being of Atlantean origin. Who was the gypsies, huh? So check out
Uh-oh.
my gypsy video. And, coming out of Egypt, the true Egypt, coming out of the true promised land, yeah, gypsies, these traveling merchants, yes. Coming out of Atlantean, yes, so-called Atlantean, right? We still here, not all of it sank. The cult of the Great Mother, Cybele, was one of the principal themes of the Crete Minoan culture. And no doubt the Egyptian Isis, as well as the Hittite goddess of fertility, were closely related to this very ancient connection. So I just want to remind everybody, we're reading a lot of, this book's written in 1940, remember? So what we're doing is, we're going to chew the fish, because I don't eat meat, guys. We're going to chew the fish, but we're going to spit out the bones. All right, so we dodged the hijack everywhere. Who really founded Crete, remember? It appears to have been mostly Danites. A lot of Hebrews, a lot of Shemitic people coming out of so-called Egypt. The true 𝓁There, Ameri, the beloved land. So let's not forget all the previous presentations. So let's continue. It says here, generally, Cybele was represented as a mother with a baby in her arms, but sometimes this goddess appears alone, clothed in a long mantle and with a high tiara-like headgear. This was occasionally completed by a long sacred veil similar to that of the Carthaginian goddess Tanit, which hid the face of the goddess from vulgar eyes. Cybele was also often called Carmona, Carimona, Cairimona, and Cairimona, and from this latter name derived our word ceremony, because the peculiar rituals of worship of Cars or Pan's mother were called in antiquity ceremonies. The order of the Vestals, example, of the maid servants of the goddess Vesta, was probably an imitation of the order Cariatis, the servants of the goddess Caria, the daughter of the divine Car. In course of time, Cybele ceased to personify the idea of fertility and mother love. Astarte and her later modifications, Aphrodite and Venus, were gradually transformed into goddesses of lascivious love only. All right, so they added all their hijacks, turning people into deities, creating idols, creating religions, creating gods. And remember how they made Judah into a god? When we're talking about Judah, we're talking about Zeus. Remember what we read in that book, Israel and the nations of Europe. And Diodorus, we find that the first Carian expedition beyond Gibraltar took place about 3500 BC. And after that, the Phoenicians as well as the Carthaginians ventured also to explore the Atlantic Ocean. We cannot find in the works of Diodorus any description of the results of these Carian expeditions. But now, thanks to the investigations in America, all right, so he was saying all that, mainstream narrative history he was trying to break down so he can let you know. Now we can kind of see when we actually start investigating America, who the Carians are. Now it says here, we begin to get some information on the subject. It is becoming clear that the trade voyages of the Carians ended in the colonization of some of the Caribbean islands and of the northern shores of South America. Again, now they're going to try to tell the story in reverse, guys. So I want you to see right away how he's, making the connection with the Caribbeans, Carians, just add the Caribbeans, but know that the origin was here, not in reverse. Perhaps, too, the Carians themselves were of American origin, like I just said, and their journeys beyond Gibraltar were nothing else than a series of visits to their ancient fatherland. Nope, dodge the hijack. This is the true old world. They was just going to colonize over there. They were coming from the true motherland right here. Right here. These astonishing conclusions are based on many archaeological finds in America and also on philological investigations. In the field, the works of Professor L. Schwenhagen, E.O. de Toren, and Barhagen are very useful. I recommend to my readers the article of E.O. de Toren, Antigüedade de Navegación de Oceano, right? It says volume 4 of the Annals of the City of Para, the Antigua Historia do Brasil from Professor L. Schwenhagen, and the book of Gustavo Barroso, 𝓁 de Atlántida. Besides these works, the book of Cândido Costa as Duas Américas is also exceedingly interesting. And these are definitely books we eventually might get into. I have run across some of them already. E.O. de Toren affirms that he found proofs of the visit of the Carians to distant Ecuador. Thanks to the deciphering of numerous American petroglyphs, it has been established that at one time a Carian dynasty ruled in Quito. It seems that the Carians populated the northwestern shores.
The Carians one time had a dynasty in Quito. Now, where is Quito? Let's do a quick search. Quito. Where is Quito? Quito. Hey explorers, Dante here. Just wanted to remind you guys, if you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and click the Patreon link in the description below if you would like to support. You could support the Patreon for the low cost of a caramel ice cap from Tim Hortons. So if you like to support the message, the platform, the page, go ahead and click the description below. Back to the episode. So is in... Oh, look at this. Quito, formerly San Francisco de Quito in Ecuador, bro. This is Ecuador. So they're from the Caribbean and they made it all the way down to Ecuador, which is on the western side of South America. So they probably, that's interesting. Like, because the Caribbean islands and then the Guyanese, Brazil, all these islands, they kind of have similar culture. So maybe they were starting in the Caribbean and went down, right, towards, where is this, Ecuador? Ecuador, and they went up to North America as well. Let's keep watching this.
Of the South America, and later on were assimilated by the autochthones of Ecuador. It is interesting to add that the Colombian scientist Miguel Triana affirms the origin of the highly cultured Chibchas of Colombia from the Caribs of the Caribbean Sea, all right? The Chibchas, huh? So part of my ancestry goes back to the 𝓁'THERE indigenous group of Costa Rica, Garabito being one of my ancestors, King Garabito. And as it says here, 𝓁'THERE, also a language, is an extinct Chibchan language of Costa Rica that was spoken by the 𝓁'THERE people. It served as the lingua franca for pre-colonial peoples in central Costa Rica and went extinct, dash the hijack, in the 17th century. Only a few words in the language are currently known, preserved mainly in the names of various Costa Rican places such as 𝓁'THERE, Barba, Curridabat, Turrialba, Tucurique, and Ujaras. 𝓁'THERE was a chief here. So going back, I find it very interesting what he's saying, that he's saying that these Carians that ended up in Quito, same people as the Caribbeans. So I already had read a book from the 1800s regarding the tribes of Costa Rica. They mentioned the 𝓁'THERE. The author claimed that they came from South America, location where the Arawak and Carib people were, coming out of Brazil, Venezuela, and sailing up to Costa Rica. So I find it very interesting, the connection here, as it says, because the 𝓁'THERE people are Chibchas, the language they're speaking comes from the Chibchas. And so I find it very interesting that Miguel Triana affirms the origin of the highly cultured Chibchas of Colombia from the Caribs of the Caribbean Sea were supposed to by Professor Schwenhagen to derive also from the Carians. Okay, they're seeing it in reverse. Let me tell you guys something. I got a future video about the spherical stone balls they found all over Costa Rica. We've gone over it already. I don't think people understood when I did the video, but this was a university of navigation over here. Panama, Costa Rica, this whole Central America has always been a canal. It's always been a center where ships would come. And there was something here like what you can say a university of navigation. These stones were part of it. And the 𝓟There people are the ones who made these spears. And now it makes sense to me. And they're seeing it in reverse. The same 𝓟There people are related to that they're saying are the Carians that all of a sudden appear out of nowhere, right, in the Mediterranean region over there in Asia Minor. So obviously, where were they coming from? Where's the true old world? We already know that. So apply that to what we're reading here, and it's all going to make sense. Now, I haven't read this chapter. I saw the title of it, and I said, this is very interesting. I think I know what it's going to say, and it's actually saying what I thought it was going to say. As Ecuador and Colombia are neighbor states, it is very possible that the same migration wave which brought the Carians or Caribs into Colombia also populated ancient Ecuador. And that's most likely the same migration wave that I was talking about, my people who ended up, the same Carib migration in Costa Rica and became known as the 𝓟Theres. Same people eventually went to Galveston, Texas. They are the Carancagua Indians, remember? And they are the ones who were really the ones involved in Juneteenth, not African slaves. Check out the video I got on that if you haven't seen it. So to me, as I'm reading this for the first time with you guys, it's all making sense. I see the migration wave they're talking about. It wasn't just to Costa Rica. They went to different parts of the Americas and even probably ended up in Asia Minor, where they're saying these Carians all of a sudden appeared there out of nowhere. Miguel Triana proves the origin of the cheap shots by the anthropometric similarity of the skulls and the ancient sepulchres of Facatativa, Colombia, and those of the Caribs, and by the study of a very remarkable mummy found in Guatavita, Colombia. All right, what is Buddha's first name? Gautama, Guatavita, Guatavita. That sounds almost like a Hindu word. You guys see, who are the ancient Nagas of ancient India, and where do they really come from? Moreover, the high cultural level of the ancient Chibchas, the legend concerning Bochica, Bochica is Quetzalcoatl, permits us to suppose that the latter resulted from Carian influences. The astronomical knowledge of the Chibchas especially induces us to believe that it was received by them from the ancient Carians, all right? The university was already there. This is what I want to show you. They're seeing it in reverse. They became known as the Carians, all right? So, that's the hijack. It is a very remarkable fact that everywhere in Central and South America, we find geographical and ethnographical terms which possess the prefix car or car. The sea which washes the northern shore of the South American continent is called the Caribbean, and its islands were populated at the time of Columbus by Caribs. The Republic of Honduras is still populated by Caribs and Caras. The tribe Carijo, Caripuna, Cario, Caraya, Carauna, etc. We also have the Cariari here in Costa Rica, are scattered partly in Central and partly in Southern America. The oldest city of Venezuela, its present capital is called Caracas, all right, Paracatay, okay, and a whole series of localities in northern Brazil possess names with the same prefix, car. For instance, Cara, Carara, Carau, Cari, Cariri, Carai, Caraiba, Cario, Cariboca, Carioca, Carutapera, Cariaco, Caralasca, Carova, Caricari, Caracaraporis, Acaray, etc., etc. There's so many just in Costa Rica alone, guys, that they're not naming right now. So this is what I'm saying. Where's the true origin of these people? They're seeing it in reverse in these books. They wrote this with a out of Africa, Mesopotamia mentality when they wrote these books. In 2023, we know better. We're realizing where the true old world was, where these people were really coming out of. These examples are very numerous. In various regions of this continent, we find the Guarani Indians, whose name, according to Professor 𝓁 derives from the Pelasgian Gara, war, which also, it seems, originated the corresponding words in French guerre, and in Spanish, guerra. 𝓟 thinks that the Guaranis are descendants of the Carian Phoenicians who called themselves the warriors peoples. But on the other hand, Gustavo Borroso believes that the word Guarani is distorted from Carani, which possesses also the famous particle card. The following circumstance is also worthy of attention. All the Indian tribes whose name contains the prefix car called the white man Cara, although the Tupi word generally accepted by the Indians for white color is Tinga, which according to Professor 𝓟 belongs also to the Carian and Pelasgian languages. Another circumstance is also interesting. Diodorus tells us that the Carians wore head adornments made of feathers. Okay? Again, the Carians wore feathers. Do I need to say anything else, guys? And we know that all the Indian tribes, from especially...
Yeah, we all know that the Caribbeans love their feathers. If you've ever played Mass in Caribana, I know you put feathers on. If you played, festival in Brazil, you put feathers on. You know what I'm saying? If you're Native American and you're in your drumming circle, you put feathers on. Where do these motifs come from? And why is it all the way, as you said, from Alaska to Patagonia? That's all the way from the top of North America to the bottom of South America. Who knows?
From Alaska to Patagonia, all right, from all the way to the Arctic to the Antarctic, Tierra de Fuego, right, are accustomed to such adornments, especially in wartime. Now remember what we read in my Danite videos? These Danaus and Danyen, they had feathers on. Who are the Caribs, the Seacoan people, so-called Phoenicians, so-called Carians? We're just talking about the same people coming out of the true old world. And they got feathers on. Perhaps this circumstance indicates the American origin of the Carians, unless inversely they learned this custom from the Indians during their voyages to America. No, sorry, now you're going to conjecture. No, they were from here. That's why they had the feathers on. Discussing the Carian colonization of the Caribbean islands, Professor 𝓟 affirms that the Carians called these islands Antillas, which name is distorted Atlantilas, example, Little Atlantis. I cannot agree with the Brazilian scientists because in the word Atlantilas we hear distinctly the Latin suffix illa, while the Carian language should be nearer to the Semitic family and cannot possess the same structure as Latin. Dim recollections concerning the past existence of Atlantis still persist among the natives of the Caribbean islands and South America. Such, for instance, is the legend concerning the island of Caraiba, which existed some millenniums ago, all right? As affirmed the natives in the Caribbean Sea, Professor 𝓟 translates the word Caraiba as the land of the Carians. According to this legend, 7 tribes of the Carian race, after a terrific catastrophe, emigrated to this island, but these traditions do not indicate the land of origin of these 7 tribes, all right? The famous 7 tribes. They called themselves Cari, but their priests changed their name into Tupi, who's the Tupi, and ordered them to use the latter name, which signifies the sons of Tupan, the great and almighty being who, according to the belief of the Tupis, rules the universe. Is not this Tupan of the Indians the Carian Tupan mentioned earlier? It's like the same thing. I was already thinking that. Let's remember my Indian slavery videos, how they were bringing the Tupis to West Africa. Many centuries BC, the islands of Caraiba was in its turn swallowed up by the sea. This second catastrophe is also mentioned in Indian tradition. The surviving Tupis emigrated to the South American continent, landing on the shores of Venezuela and founding their city of Caracas. Some centuries later, seafarers from a distant eastern country came to Venezuela and gradually transported almost the entire people of the Tupis into Brazil. So they just took everybody over there. Only a small tribe of Tupinambas left some of its clans in Venezuelan territory. It appears that the Tupis landed on the island of Ahau in the Amazonian Delta. Wow. So maybe that's when the great wave came, you know, they fled, something happened, and it makes sense. And again, the 𝓁_ṱhere are known to have been coming from Venezuela before they ended up in Costa Rica. The name of this island slightly resembling the name of the upper Amazon, Marañón. Uh-oh, the Anion Sea, right? Anon or Anion. Shout out to Drop Nation. Was pronounced at first as Marayo or Marayon, and only later was transformed by the Portuguese into Marajo, which corresponds better to the spirit of their language. Professor Varnhagen is of the opinion that the words Mara-ion in the Carian language signified a great river, but the word ion sounds like the name of a certain small state of Ion in the archipelago Ionian Islands, which at one time belonged to the Carian Union. Perhaps the explanation of another expert, Professor Schwenhagen, is more plausible. He believes that these newcomers to Brazil meant by Great Ion, Mara Ion, the country of their origin, example, the Ionian Islands. Nah, dash the hijack. Again, seeing it in reverse, author, you said that in the beginning. They're not originally from there. They just appeared in Asia Minor out of nowhere. 𝓁_ṱhere, the name of a locality on the island of Marajo, again reminds us of the Carians. Some years ago, there were found prehistoric cyclopic ruins, where some scientists consider Etruscan and others Carian. The reader probably remembers the already mentioned discoveries in Marajo of ancient pottery resembling much of the Etruscan style and also of Etruscan and Carian inscriptions. Okay, Etruscan now, all the way in Brazil. Who were these mysterious seafarers from the distant east who, according to the Tupi legend, transported the majority of their nation into the Amazonian delta? They could either be the Carians or the Phoenicians, because both needed men for their American enterprises. Their friendship towards the Tupis could be explained by a common origin for all three nations, Carians, Phoenicians, and Tupis, okay? Common origin in the true old world. Those clans of the latter who did not consent to emigrate again remained in Venezuela. Professor Varnhagen affirms that the Tupis of that country still preserve legends of the consecutive migrations of their forefathers. Some clans of the Tupis, both in Venezuela and in Brazil, call themselves proudly Tupinamba, the true Tupis. The legend of the Guaranis also mentions Tupinamba, the daughter of the prophet 𝓁_ṱhere and the foremother of the Guaranis Indians. The tribe known as Tupinamba still preserves some knowledge as astronomy, perhaps inherited from their distant forefathers, the Carians. As Thucydides calls the divine car a Chaldean magician, it is clear that the legendary founder of the Carian Empire must have possessed some knowledge of astronomy because the Chaldeans were remarkable astronomers and astrologers. Who are the Chaldeans? I catch up on the previous presentations. A missionary of the 17th century, Father d'Abbeville, published a highly interesting treatise concerning the astronomical knowledge of the Tupinambas and was rewarded with severe criticism for the French experts of his time. The erudite doctors of the Sorbonne could not conceive that a barbarous Indian tribe could possess any astronomical knowledge. The religion of the Tupis appeared in northern Brazil some millenniums.
Right, and that's we'll rewind it back a little bit. And this is so interesting because basically what he's saying here is that where is it? One of these guys okay, so a missionary of the 17th century, Father d'Abbeville, published a highly interesting treatise concerning. So basically, this missionary, a guy who travels around and spreads the good word of the Lord, he basically goes and sees that these Tupinambas, had astronomical knowledge. They already knew about space. All right. And he says, yeah, I brought this back to France. And then France is like, what? These barbarians can't know about space. Only we know about space because we're French and we're white. But yeah. So they just basically said, oh, they could not have had these people, these Caribs, these Carians could not have possessed any astronomical knowledge. But why not? He never even says why not. It's just like, nah, they can't because they're barbarous or barbarian. All right, we'll watch maybe 2 more minutes and then we'll end this episode because this is way longer than I thought it was. But this is an interesting topic. If you guys like it, leave a comment down below, leave a like. Let me know what your thoughts are. But let's finish up this section right here.
Conceived that a barbarous Indian tribe could possess any astronomical knowledge. The religion of the Tupis appeared in northern Brazil some millenniums before our era, coinciding apparently with the earliest Carian or Phoenician visits to the country. The Tupi language in itself is one of the most vivid proofs of a connection between the ancient civilizations of the Old and New worlds. All right, proof, vivid proof. The language, the Tupi, study the Tupi. Its relation to the Carian and
proof. Okay. Proof. I mean, what more do you want? People ask for proof. We bring them proof. It's like, this is not the proof that I want. This is proof right here. The Tupi language in itself is one of the most vivid proofs, all right? So the mere existence of this language is one of the most vivid proofs of a connection between the ancient civilizations of the old world and the new world. All right? This is vivid proof that there is a connection between the old world and the new world, and it's from the Tupi language of northern Brazil. Vivid proof. Anyways, all right, let's finish it up again.
Pelasgian languages has been studied by Professor 𝓁There. All right, we're going to get into this in future videos, the study of philology. We're going to follow it around the world, and you're going to see all these connections as they're doing here with the Tupi, the Pelasgian, Etruscan, and Carian. So Professor 𝓁There, who finds that the language is really a Tupi-Pelasgian combination. The Tupi tribe, known as Gigis or Geges, calls its own dialect 𝓁There, a universal language. This implies that the Tupi language in general was at one time very widely diffused and used probably by the Carians, Pelasgi, Atlanteans, and also certain American nations. Professor 𝓁There, the oldest history of Brazil. A further study of the Tupi language seems to show that the above-mentioned belt of civilized nations was connected also with Samaria. Talking about the real one. Numerous words of the Tupi language are contained in the legislative text of the Sumerian king Urgana, 4000 BC, which is preserved in the British Museum. All right, we're talking about Assyrian script. The Carian language possessed a word, summer, chief of priests, which transformed into 𝓁 is still employed by the Tupis for the designation of priests, sorcerers, or even Christian missionaries and physicians. Vestiges of the Phoenicians are very numerous in the Brazilian state of Piauí. There have been discovered, for instance, the pyramid of 𝓁'there, a prehistoric building which probably was erected by the Phoenicians as a kind of necropolis. So this info right here corroborates with the other books we've been reading, Mysteries of Ancient South America and Secret Cities of Ancient South America, what they're finding in these jungles. They just told you right here, Pyramid of 𝓁'there is a prehistoric building probably built by Phoenicians, so-called Phoenicians. The earlier mentioned tribe of Gegis lives in Piauí. Its language, 𝓁There or 𝓁There, closely resembles the language of the Albanian tribes of Gigis. Albanian tribes. Such similarity of languages in two
Albania is not even in North or South America.
Tribes were separated from each other by such an enormous distance but bear the same name of Gigis is striking. doubtless the Albanian and Brazilian Gigis belong to the same tribe. Who knew that? All right, so real quick, because this is something new to me. I never heard of these people. So this is what I found. I didn't find Gigis, but I found this Gegs, also spelled Gegs, Albanian, are one of the two major dialectal subgroups of Albanians. The Gegs speak Geg Albanian, one of the two main dialects of Albanian languages. All right, Geg is. So he's saying doubtless the Albanian and Brazilian Gigis or Geges belong to the same tribe. At some time, either Albanian clans emigrated to South America or Brazilian clans went to Europe, and that's the reality right there. But I
Now, comment down below. What do you guys think happened? Did Albanians go from Albania to Brazil, or did Brazilians go from Brazil to Albania? Because they're both there. They're both there before Columbus went from Spain to the Bahamas or wherever he landed. Which do you think it is? Albania to Brazil or Brazil to Albania?
believe that there is a third and more plausible solution, that all the Gigis originated from Atlantis. All right, what is Atlantis? So see how he's putting Atlantis like,
Whoa, trick question, option C. They're all from Atlantis.
apart from America, it's all connected. And eventually some of them emigrated to Brazil and others to Albania. Professor 𝁟There considers that their language, the languages of the Tupis and Basque, and even the Semitic tongues are derived from a Pelasgi Carian root. It is significant that Basque still call themselves the 𝓟There, a name which again reminds us of the Carians, the Basque, huh? Some South American tribes possess traditions concerning from a certain Karu land, which name is identical to that of the old Phoenicia. We venture to assert that the word Karau or Karau designated in very remote antiquity a country wherefrom issued not only the Phoenicians and Carians, but also certain South American Indian tribes. Some experts suppose that the Guaranis and Tupis either derive from the enigmatical Ibers, or that all these three tribes possess a common origin. All right, there you go. Yeah, from the true old world. Later on, the Ibers emigrated into the present Spain, and the two other tribes went westward to the shores of South America. So he's kind of seen it again in reverse. They actually went out of America, ended up in the Iberian Peninsula, and from there went a lot of places, Europe, Asia, Africa. Were this hypothesis justified, we could assert that the common fatherland of the Phoenicians and Semites in general, of the Carians, Ibers, Pelasgi, Guaranis, and Tupis was Atlantis, all right, America. In this case, all the enumerated tribes would be nothing else than various branches of the great Atlantean race. We can find in the Tupi language words which sound identical with some Palestinian geographical terms, such as, for instance, the words Canaan, Aramea, and others. Guaranis of the Brazilian state of Ceará use a dialect full of words resembling Hebrew. The state of Ceará is situated in the northeastern corner of the continent, right opposite the western shore of the African Sahara, and like the latter is arid and often suffers from drought. The resemblance of the word Ceará and the Semitic Sahara, combined with the similarity of the physical geographical conditions and the situation of both countries, is striking. Some scientists have even attempted to find in this coincidence a proof in favor of Wegener's hypothesis, affirming that at one time Ceará and the Sahara were one great desert. Many names of Brazilian rivers and the Indian tribes who live along their banks contain the prefix Hoti, as for instance Potihara, Potiguara, etc. Professor 𝓟There recognizes in this prefix the Pelasgian word Hoti, signifying a rivulet or an affluent. Later on, the Greeks adopted it in Potamus River. The same expert believes that the Quichuas or Antis emigrated to South America from Atlantis. All right, all the same, all connected, one empire, America too. The Brazilian philologist The 𝓟There affirms that the Quechua tongue has a great deal of resemblance with Old Egyptian, Greek, and
Old Egyptian, right? So not, Egypt as we know now, not even ancient Egypt, but old Egyptians, because remember the ancient Egyptians looked to a culture before them, right? Which is where 𝓁 and 𝓟There comes from. And so he's saying this language is similar between Old Egyptian, Greek, and
even Hindustani.
Hindustani. What?
Even Hindustani, who are the ancient Nagas. All right, again, the Quechua tongue. Where's the true old world? This gentleman has made a detailed study of this resemblance and has discovered numerous similarities and analogies between Quechua and the old Egyptian language. This similarity of languages in such distant races gives strong support in favor of the hypothesis of the American origin of the Egyptians. Again, I'm going to repeat that. Did you guys hear that? Read it with me. We're going to say that again.
Let's say it again.
Because of all this research and study he did, and others, right? With the Quechua tongue and the Egyptian language, the old one, this similarity of languages in such distant races gives strong support in favor of the hypothesis of the American origin of the Egyptians.
The American origins of the Egyptians. So they were already talking about this idea in the 1940s, bro. The 1940s, they were talking about the ancient American origin of the Egyptians. And as we know, the Egyptians say they came from a distant land, from Atlantis, and they came, like, they literally say this, but yet we dispute it or don't agree. We don't even listen. We don't read the books, but it says right here.
All right. Yes, America's a true old world. Egypt was over here. And remember, we got all this already. And 𝓅There is of the opinion that the Egyptians, as well as the Pelasgi, originated from America and Atlantis. And Atlantis, America and Atlantis, same place. Yes, Tamari, America, the beloved land, Ameri. And he's done his homework when it comes to studying languages. If you guys look up his book, his full name is Enrique Onfroy de Toron. And you'll see his books, somewhat of an expert in languages because of his studies. And he's saying, hey, the Egyptians originated in America. It's not just us saying it. A lot of people has come before us and
He
said
said
it.
Egyptians come
𝓅There
from America
claims
and
to have
Atlantis.
traced the origin of the Greek deities and their primeval significance. The Pelasgi have a tradition that their religion and gods came from an unknown race who inhabited a distant western continent, all right? Just like the so-called Egyptians, right? The western continent, Amenti. Such a continent could either only be America or Atlantis. Same place. There are reasons to believe that the establishment of the Pelasgi in Peloponnesus and Crete and of the pre-Egyptians in the Nile Valley occurred at about the same time, and that this invasion of the Mediterranean basin by the Americo-Atlanteans, remember, was the third wave of immigrants from Atlantis, which according to Lewis Spence swept across Western Europe, all right? And this might coincide with my Danite videos, how the Egyptians were being invaded by the Danyang. Here we must appreciate the striking resemblance between the vestures and sacred attributes of the old Egyptian priest and the vestures and attributes of the priests of certain South American tribes. When Alvarez Cabral landed on the spot where now stands the Brazilian capital, he met their Guarani Indians. They called the region Carioca. The word Oca signifies in Guarani home abode and resembles the Greek oika, which has the same significance. All right? You see, the Guarani word Cari means white men, and thus the whole expression Carioca signifies a body of white men. But do they really mean white, as he's saying, or pure, or something else? Is he translating it correctly? Such
Mm.
an etymology proves that at one time the region around Rio de Janeiro was inhabited by white newcomers. So another thing I want to say, and you guys mentioned it when I was reading Frank Joseph's books, who also, talks about Atlantis. A lot of these New Age people or people writing about Atlantis, you know, I found out it might be called my theory, but I just see it too often, and they seem to all have a pattern of what they're saying. They're all saying Atlanteans are all white. It's like literally the reason they're writing these books to prove Atlantis was real, just because they're saying it was a white civilization. So again, chew the fish, spit out the bones. The earlier mentioned Phoenician inscription on
Mm.
the nearby rock of 𝓁 allows us to suppose that they must have been Phoenicians. All right, remember the rock of 𝓁? We've talked about this. I've shown it. We read about it in one of my videos, and yeah, it's a face of a giant where it appears to be wearing like a helmet, and it has some inscriptions on the side that appear to be so-called Phoenician. All right, that's the 𝓁
Oh,
rock.
I didn't know
These
this.
unknown newcomers called themselves the Cari, and the Guaranis presumably adopted this term as a designation for any white man. So, dodge the hijack again. The Brazilians still call any inhabitant of the capital or its surroundings Carioca. The Ionian islands of the archipelago 4 millenniums ago were inhabited by the tribe known as Ionians, who formed the little state of Ion. The misty traditions of antiquity asseverate that the Ionians belonged to a Grecian race, but this supposition seems to be mistaken. The Ionians were allied to the Carians and Trojans, whose state was called Ilion. Although Trojans called themselves Dardans, all right, remember Darda is the son of Sarah, the son of Judah. Trojans are Israelites. When the great war of antiquity, sung by Homer, had been ended, the vanquished Dardans, together with other members of the Carian Union, Carians and Ionians, were obliged to seek a shelter from the wrath of the victorious Achaeans in other countries. The Phoenician seafarers probably played a most important role in the evacuation of the vanquished peoples. They transported on their ships the numerous refugees of Ion and Ilion to various points of the Mediterranean basin. Thus, the Phoenicians populated their numerous colonies with the refugees who supplied them with cheap labor. The legends tell how the Trojan princess Dido, I remember this is the line of Judah, founded Carthage. Who founded Carthage? A princess of Judah? And other refugees helped to start colonies in Spain and southern France in a similar way, okay? This is the history. Apply all the previous presentations, what we learned, to what we're reading, and dodge the hijack when you see it. You guys start to see a bigger picture, right? See how all these people are connecting, and the Carians and Caribs and all these people from America to all these so-called Greeks who we know already are coming from the true promised land.
Yep.
A lot of them Israelites, talking about ancient America, true Canaan. So again, a Trojan princess founded Carthage and a lot of colonies in Spain and southern France. But it is now becoming clear that some immigrants from the archipelago in Asia Minor emigrated even beyond the Mediterranean shores, and that the Phoenician triremes carried many of them to America. Was not the appearance of the Carians on the South American shores due to this fact? No, you're seeing it in reverse. We have already mentioned the archaeological finds on the Marajo Island and the conjectures of Professor Varnhagen. Diodorus recording the
All right. We got 20 minutes left in this video. Should we go through it? Might as well. We got time. Let's see what it
rescue of the
say.
Trojan
This is
refugees
a
by
long
their
episode.
ancient allies, the Phoenicians.
Oh, no, actually, you know what? I
Their
don't have
allies,
time. We do have to end this video because my camera's going to die. So, yeah, I think we're going to actually end the episode there. Once again, guys, comment down below what you guys think of this new gnosis. What do you think? Once again, do you guys think that the true old world is, America / Atlantis / the Caribbean? Or do you think that, we just ignore what the ancient Egyptians say, which is what the Greeks base their stuff off of? You know what I mean? Like the Greeks take their information from Egypt, and the Egyptians take their information from the earlier Egyptians, and then those earlier Egyptians take them from the Carians. I don't know. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Make sure you leave a like. leave a comment. Share this with a Caribbean friend that you know who might be interested in this. And yeah, I guess that's it. Until the next time, here's the outro music. What's up, explorers? Hope you enjoyed the episode. Just a reminder, once again, if you haven't already, go ahead and check the link in the description below to join our Patreon. There you'll find exclusive behind-the-scenes content that's not for the YouTube, just for the Patreon, just for those that want to go that next step further and support the page. So yeah, go ahead and check it out. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, leave a comment. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would like to see, if you have any topics. But, you know, topics is for the Patreon members only. So go ahead and check out the Patreon. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Later. Peace.
Further.
I'm sorry?
You said my skills extend farther than the basketball court. Farther relates to distance. Further is a definition of degree. You should have said further.